When legendary cave diver Alex Morgan set out to break the record for the deepest underwater passage, he knew the risks, but nothing could have prepared him for what lay in the depths. Hours after he disappeared beneath the surface, a frantic recovery mission was launched. What rescuers discovered in the darkness would uncover a chilling truth and change everything they thought they knew about Ethan's dive. 647 feet beneath the surface, where darkness swallows light and water pressure can crush standard equipment like paper cups, Alex Morgan became a legend. 3 years ago, his record-breaking dive into Mexico's Sistema Huautla cemented his reputation as the world's premier cave diver. Today, standing at the edge of Florida's Phantom Spring, he prepares to challenge something deadlier. Morning light ripples across the crystal-clear surface of the spring, deceptively peaceful above the labyrinth that has claimed 3 lives in 2 decades. Alex checks his shearwater dive computer one final time, the specialized Perdix model screen glowing with critical information. Gas mixtures, depth limits, decompression schedules. Every calculation double-checked, triple verified. "People think I'm chasing records," Alex tells the documentary crew, his eyes never leaving his equipment. "I'm not. I'm searching for what's hidden." At 42, his face carries the weathered experience of someone who spent more time underwater than most spend in traffic. The silver at his temples contrasts with the intensity in his eyes. 27 world records across 15 countries, 12 new cave passages mapped. 3. Recovery operations of other divers who never resurfaced. Dr. Lena Chen approaches, clipboard in hand. "Trinix analysis is perfect," she reports, referring to the specialized breathing gas mixture of oxygen, helium and nitrogen that allows survival at extreme depths. 1842 blend for the deep section. Nitrox stages for the exit. Her precision matches Alex's. Nothing left to chance when margins for error underwater measure in seconds, not minutes. The spring surface betrays nothing of what lies beneath. A vertical shaft descending 80 feet before opening into the first chamber, then a series of increasingly narrower tunnels leading to the fabled Phantom Passage. No one has ever traversed it completely. No one knows what waits on the other side. Behind them, Marcus Webb organizes the rebreather units, closed-circuit systems that recycle exhaled gas, extending dive time while reducing telltale bubbles. "CCR primary is reading optimal," he calls out. "Redundancy checks on backup systems complete. Scrubber media is fresh." Each technical term represents another layer of protection against the unforgiving physics of the deep. Alex runs his hand across the 7 tanks he'll stage at various depths, insurance policies of breathable gas for the return journey. His meticulous preparation stands in stark contrast to the 3 divers who died attempting this same passage. Javier Cortez in 2008, Sarah Mitchell in 2015, Thomas Keller just 18 months ago. "Difference between them and me isn't talent," Alex says, connecting his primary regulator to his mouthpiece and testing the airflow. "It's respect for what's down there. The cave doesn't care about your records or your confidence. Physics is undefeated." The documentary director steps forward. "What makes the Phantom Passage worth the risk?" The question hangs in the morning air. Alex pauses, looking toward the innocuous pool of water that marks the entrance to one of the most dangerous cave systems in the Western Hemisphere. Because it's the last great mystery in North American cave diving. A passage that shouldn't exist, defying geological expectations. His voice takes on a different quality, something like reverence. "And because 3 good divers never came back, we owe them answers." Jamie Torres activates the underwater reconnaissance drone, its propellers sending ripples across the spring's surface. "Pre-dive recon beginning now," she announces, eyes fixed on the control tablet. "Mapping the first 80 meters to confirm conditions match our projections." The drone disappears beneath the surface, A technological scout for the human explorer. Alex watches the drone's live feed, studying the initial descent shaft. Water visibility, exceptional. Current, minimal. Conditions, optimal. The kind of perfect scenario that makes experienced cave divers most cautious. You don't get into trouble when things look bad, he mutters, almost to himself. You get into trouble when everything looks perfect and you let your guard down. Dr. Chun approaches with the medical kit, checking Alex's vitals one final time. Blood pressure normal. Resting heart rate 52. Oxygen saturation 99%. Her clipboard fills with baselines that will help track any physiological changes after the extreme dive. Marcus slaps Alex's shoulder, their 20 years of diving partnership contained in the gesture. Just remember the Morgan method. You wrote the book on this stuff for a reason. The Morgan method, Alex's systematic approach to extreme cave penetration, has become standard training in technical diving circles. Methodical gas management. Conservative thirds rule for air supply. Continuous guideline deployment. Psychological discipline during task loading. His insistence on redundant safety measures has saved countless lives. Before donning his mask, Alex looks once more at the spring, its surface now dancing with light as the sun rises higher. The impossible chamber waits below, cloaked in darkness, but soon to receive its visitor. Tomorrow, the diving world will either celebrate another Morgan record or mount another recovery mission. Either way, the Phantom Passage will reveal its secrets. Darkness has claimed the lives of 3 elite divers in the Phantom Passage's murky depths, each one believing they could conquer what many experts consider the underwater equivalent of Everest's death zone. Alex Morgan studies the detailed 3D mapping on his tablet, the blue glow illuminating his weathered face as he traces the twisting channels with a practiced finger. This restriction at 340 feet, that's where Mitchell turned back in 2015. He explains, zooming in on a narrow crevice barely wide enough for a human body. And this chamber beyond it has never been fully explored. Dr. Chun leans over his shoulder, her expression grave. The extreme depth alone creates significant risks. Nitrogen narcosis, oxygen toxicity, helium tremors. Even with Trimix, your cognitive function will be compromised. She points to another section of the map. And these currents can change without warning. Remember the Vortex Cave incident in 2010? Alex nods solemnly. Christopher Wu, one of the best technical divers I've ever known. Current shifted during his exit, pinned him against the wall. By the time his team could reach him, it was too late. He sets down the tablet, moving to the wall where equipment specifications are meticulously displayed. That's why we've designed these modified propulsion units. If I encounter unexpected flow, they provide 3 times the thrust of standard models. The equipment room of the expedition's base camp resembles a NASA laboratory more than a diving operation. Custom-built rebreathers, specialized gas mixing stations, and carbon fiber tanks arranged in precise order. Each piece of equipment represents the cutting edge of diving technology, much of it designed specifically for this attempt. The Phantom Passage has claimed 3 lives that we know of. Marcus announces to the documentary crew as he calibrates a complex gas analyzer. His hands move with surgical precision, checking mixtures down to the 0.1%. Mitchell, in 2015, made it the furthest at approximately 1,200 feet into the system before turning back due to a restriction. Keller, only a little over a year ago, had equipment failure at depth. Cortez in 2008 was the first documented fatality, caught in a silt out with no visibility. The team falls silent at the mention of these names, legends in the cave diving community who pushed boundaries and paid the ultimate price. What makes the Phantom different from other extreme cave systems isn't just the depth. Alex explains, pulling up sonar readings on the main display. It's the unpredictability. The Mexican cenotes have greater depths. Florida's Eagle's Nest has tighter restrictions. But the Phantom combines everything: depth, distance restrictions, changing currents, and some passages where you have to remove equipment to squeeze through with no clear guarantee of airspace beyond. Dr. Chen points to a particular reading on one of the monitors. The water chemistry is another factor. Hydrogen sulfide pockets have been detected in the lower chambers. One wrong turn, and you could swim into an area with toxic gas dissolved in the water. Alex nods, his expression unchanged. Years of extreme diving have taught him to process risks analytically, without emotion. That's why we've modified these gas sensors. They'll alert me to any chemical changes in real time. Jamie enters with a tablet showing the latest data. The drone mapping completed another section. We've got approximately 700 feet of new terrain charted beyond the Nielsen restriction, but the signal degraded in this area. He points to a shadowy section where the 3D rendering becomes unclear. Something in the mineral composition interferes with sonar and radio transmission. Alex studies the new information carefully. So beyond this point, I'll be truly on my own. No communication, no mapping data. Exactly why this is madness, Dr. Chun interjects. Beyond that point, we have no way to guide or assist you. Standard rescue protocols become impossible. Outside the technical planning room, a memorial wall displays photographs of the 3 divers who never returned from the Phantom. Their equipment, recovered in previous expeditions, is preserved in glass cases. A solemn reminder of the passages. Dangers. I've studied every mistake, every equipment failure, every decision point, Alex says, standing before the memorial. Mitchell's final dive log showed she was pushing her gas reserves too aggressively. Cortez's rebreather wasn't designed for the extreme pressure gradients. Keller went in without redundant mapping systems. He turns to face his team, his expression resolute. I'm not attempting this because I think I'm better than they were. I'm attempting it because I've learned from them. Their exploration, even their failures, provided data that makes this possible now. Marcus checks the custom dive computer. Its multiple screens displaying decompression algorithms far more complex than standard diving calculations. Your decompression obligation will be extreme. Even with accelerated protocols and a habitat at 20 feet, we're looking at nearly 30 hours of decompression time for a 4-hour bottom exploration. Alex nods, having already accepted this reality. The human body wasn't designed to go where I'm going. Every minute at that depth incurs a debt that must be repaid. He picks up his primary regulator, testing the breathing resistance with practiced precision. But if we're right about what's beyond the restriction, it will be worth every hour. The team falls silent, each member aware that they're preparing for an attempt that pushes beyond what many consider the limits of human capability. The Phantom Passage doesn't forgive mistakes. It doesn't allow for rescue. It offers only discovery or darkness. And Alex Morgan has made peace with both possibilities. The radiant sunlight seeped through the windows of the Coastal Expedition Center as Alex Morgan reviewed the final team roster. 20 years of extreme cave diving had taught him one critical lesson. Solo achievements required elite support teams. The Phantom Passage wouldn't just test his limits. It would demand the perfect combination of specialized experts, each bringing crucial skills to an operation where redundancy meant survival. Dr. Chen's hands moved with practiced precision as she configured the specialized gas analyzers. 3. PhDs in diving physiology and hyperbaric medicine made her the world's leading authority on extreme depth human performance. She'd kept Alex alive during his record-breaking 721-foot dive in the blue hole when unexpected narcosis had nearly claimed him. Trinix readings are exact at all test depths, she announced, her voice carrying the measured confidence of someone who understood that decimal points separated life from death. Your custom blend will maintain optimal mental function to 850 feet. But the helium ratio means absolutely no margin for depth creep beyond the planned profile. Marcus Webb entered carrying the rebreather units, his weathered face testament to 30 years of elite technical diving. His methodical inspection of each component reflected the mindset that had made him the most respected equipment specialist in extreme underwater exploration. Primary and secondary loop checks complete, Marcus reported, documenting each test result with military precision. Counterlungs showing optimal resistance patterns, scrubber media at 100% efficiency. Redundant electronics calibrated with triple verification. Alex nodded, studying the three-dimensional cave mapping displayed across specialized monitors. Behind him, Jamie manipulated controls that guided the prototype exploration ROV through a virtual simulation of the passage. Micro-ROV battery duration exceeding expectations by 22 minutes. Jamie confirmed, eyes fixed on telemetry data streaming. Across her screen, fiber optic tether tested to 900 feet with zero signal degradation. We've mapped the first 3 chambers with millimeter precision. Alex moved to the equipment staging area where 4 custom rebreathers stood prepared, each representing over $40,000 of specialized life support technology. Beyond them, stage bottles containing various gas mixtures waited in precisely calculated staging positions. Everything arranged according to the Morgan method, the systematic approach to extreme diving that had become standard procedure for record attempts. Surface support operations confirmed, reported Kylie Zhao, their communications specialist. Redundant tracking systems deployed at entry point and first 2 air chambers. Acoustic relay stations will maintain contact to Zone 3, but beyond that point, double quotes, her voice trailed off. Everyone understood. Beyond Zone 3 lay the passage's most lethal section, where standard communications failed and divers entered true isolation. Dr. Chun approached with Alex's biometric sensors. "Your baseline readings are optimal," she said, applying the chest monitor with clinical efficiency. Resting heart rate 42 BPM, blood oxygen saturation 99%. Neurological responses ideal. For deep operations. The room quieted as Alex addressed the assembled team. 15 specialists, each representing the pinnacle of their respective diving disciplines, waited for final instructions. "This attempt follows standard Morgan method," he began, voice calm but authoritative. "Predetermined go-no-go decision. Points established at each waypoint. Any single safety parameter deviation triggers immediate mission abort." Marcus stepped forward, displaying the specialized emergency equipment. Bailout procedures rehearsed for 28 distinct failure scenarios. Each support diver assigned specific rescue positions with overlapping responsibility zones. Dr. Chun nodded in agreement. Medical intervention equipment staged at 100-foot intervals through mapped sections. Decompression protocols calculated with triple redundancy, including worst-case emergency ascent profiles. Jamie activated the final simulation sequence, showing the complete dive path with all decision points clearly marked. Our OV reconnaissance complete through Chamber 7. Beyond that point, we have theoretical modeling only. Alex acknowledged each team member with the quiet confidence that had defined his 20-year career. No bravado, no unnecessary drama. Just methodical preparation for an attempt where success and survival would be determined by the smallest details. Outside, the ocean remained calm, offering perfect conditions for tomorrow's attempt. Inside, the elite team continued their preparations, each focused on their specialized tasks, each understanding that their collective expertise represented Alex's true life support system. The Phantom Passage had claimed 3 lives in 2 decades. Tomorrow would determine if human preparation could overcome nature's deadliest underwater labyrinth. Dawn's first rays shone through the surface waters as Alex Morgan completed his final equipment check, the specialized rebreather hissing softly. with each controlled breath. His support team gathered around the platform, their faces showing that unique mixture of excitement and concern that accompanies all groundbreaking attempts. Marcus adjusted the Trimix tanks one last time. "Those extra bailout bottles might make all the difference down there," he said, voice muffled behind his neoprene hood. Alex nodded, checking his dive computer once more, the custom algorithm specifically programmed for the extreme depths of the Phantom passage glowing with cold blue precision. "Communications check." Dr. Chun's voice came through the bone conducting headset, clear and professional, just as it had during their 100 previous dives together. "Receiving you 5x5, Alex responded automatically, his mind already shifting into the hyper-focused state that had made him a record holder 5 times over. Jamie Torres monitored the ROV feeds from a separate station. The underwater drone had mapped the first 800 feet of the passage yesterday, adding critical data to their planning. "Telemetry is solid, current readings stable at entrance," the data specialist confirmed, tapping the screen where depth measurements scrolled past. Alex slipped beneath the surface with practiced efficiency, the weight of history and expectation falling away as water embraced him. Those first moments of a dive always brought clarity, no matter the challenge ahead. The entrance to the Phantom Passage yawned below, a dark mouth in the limestone cliff face beckoning with ancient patience. The primary lights on his helmet cut through the gloom, revealing the narrow restrictions that had defeated so many before him. "Entering primary tunnel now," he reported calmly. "Visibility approximately 30 feet. Conditions as expected." The first section proceeded exactly according to plan, his movements economical and precise, conserving both gas and energy for the challenges ahead. The tunnel walls gleamed under his lights, revealing delicate formations that few human eyes had ever witnessed. His depth gauge showed 220 feet now, the pressure squeezing against every inch of his specialized suit. "First checkpoint reached," he confirmed to the surface team. "Proceeding to Harkin's Needle." Named after the first diver to document it, this notorious restriction had been the turning point for most previous attempts. Marcus's voice came through, slightly distorted at this depth. "Looking good on biometrics, Alex. Oxygen partial pressure optimal." The data feeds from Alex's equipment transmitted a constant stream of vital information to the surface team, monitoring everything from gas consumption to core temperature to decompression obligations. 2 hours into the dive, Alex paused at the restriction, his experienced eyes assessing the tight passage that would require him to remove his primary tanks and push them ahead of him through the narrow opening. "Beginning passage of Harkin's Needle," he reported. "Removing bailout units as planned." The limestone squeezed him from all sides as he maneuvered through the restriction, the specialized side mount configuration allowing him just enough clearance to pass through what would be an impossible barrier for a traditional diver. Beyond the needle, the passage opened slightly before descending at a sharp angle deeper into the Earth's crust. "Checkpoint 2 reached," Alex confirmed, retrieving and reattaching his equipment. "Proceeding to the junction." His voice betrayed no hint of the physical effort the passage had required. At 340 feet depth, the water pressure crushed everything not equalized properly, the specialized helium mixture in his breathing system preventing the narcotic effects that would cloud judgment at such depths. Alex's lights revealed something unexpected ahead. "Surface team, I'm seeing a restriction not on our maps," he reported, studying the narrow fissure where the main passage seemed to divide. "Appears to be a new collapse or previously undocumented feature." Dr. Chun's voice came back with trained calm. "What's your assessment?" Alex studied the formation, calculating gas reserves against the unplanned obstacle. "I'm seeing a potential bypass route approximately 3 meters to the east of planned trajectory. Appears navigable." The decision point had arrived. Turn. Back now with a successful exploratory dive or push forward into genuinely uncharted territory. Alex's dive computer showed he remained within safety parameters. The contingency plans they'd established allowed for exactly this type of situation. "I'm proceeding through the eastern bypass," he reported. Visibility reduced to approximately 15 feet due to silt, but passage appears stable. His light caught something beyond the restriction, a glimpse of an opening that widened beyond anything documented in previous attempts. "Surface team, I may have found something significant beyond the restriction." The excitement in his voice was controlled, but unmistakable. "Beginning final approach to the junction," Alex reported as he carefully navigated the narrow bypass. "After this transmission, I'll be entering the zone where communication will be temporarily lost as expected." They had anticipated this communications blackout due to the density of rock between the deepest section and the surface. Next scheduled contact in 20 minutes upon reaching the chamber. Dr. Chun acknowledged the information with professional efficiency. "Understood, Alex. Will maintain scheduled communication protocols." 20-minute countdown initiated. Her voice betrayed none of the tension that accompanied every such communications gap. "Proceeding to final descent phase," were Alex's last transmitted words as he slipped deeper into the phantom passage, his lights disappearing into the absolute darkness that had swallowed divers before him. The surface team settled in for the longest 20 minutes of their lives, not yet knowing that this scheduled communication would never come. 3 hours into what should have been a 6-hour operation, the phantom passage support team's confidence began to fracture. Marcus checked his diving chronometer for the 4th time in 10 minutes, his weathered face tight with concentration. "Checkpoint 2 missed," he announced to the assembled team, his voice carrying the forced calm of someone who'd handled emergencies before. Standard protocol dictated a 15-minute grace period before initiating response procedures, but everyone at the command tent knew Alex Morgan had never missed a scheduled communication in his 15-year career. "Could be equipment malfunction," Dr. Chun suggested, her fingers rapidly scrolling through contingency protocols on her tablet. "Alex has redundant communication systems. Both would have to fail simultaneously." The unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. Radio silence at this depth rarely meant anything good. At the monitoring station, Jamie adjusted the underwater tracking system, recalibrating to account for the passage's notorious signal interference. "I've still got his beacon," Jamie reported, tapping the pulsing dot on the digital map. "Holding at 137 meters, just before the chimney restriction. No movement in the last 40 minutes. The chimney, a vertically oriented tunnel barely wide enough for a diver with twin tanks, represented the most challenging section of the planned route. Alex had estimated 3 minutes to navigate its twisting confines, with no room for error or panic. A stationary signal there raised possibilities no one wanted to voice. Marcus keyed the underwater communication system again, his voice betraying the first hints of tension. "Phantom base to Morgan, radio check over." The response was the same hollow static that had greeted their last 6 attempts. Dr. Chun approached the command table, her medical training evident in her methodical assessment. "If we assume he entered the chimney at last contact, his primary air supply would be at 43% now. Contingency tanks would give him another 3 hours maximum." She tapped her calculator with precision. "Critical decision point is 90 minutes from now. After that ... "I know the protocols, Doctor," Marcus cut in, the edge in his voice not directed at her, but at the situation. 20 years of diving partnership with Alex had taught him to trust Morgan's judgment, but also the unforgiving nature of extreme cave diving. "Jamie, deploy the secondary rove. Get us eyes as close to the chimney entrance as possible." The support team moved with practiced efficiency, each member understanding their role in the emergency response framework Alex himself had designed. The remotely operated vehicle, a specialized unit built for tight underwater passages, descended into the darkness of the Phantom's mouth, its powerful lights cutting through the murky water. 4 hours in, the second checkpoint came and went, with no communication. Marcus stared at the command table's digital display, the tracking beacon now worryingly static. He's overdue by 70 minutes. No movement, no communication. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Dr. Chien's voice remained professional, though her eyes betrayed concern. His calculated air reserve has passed the primary safety threshold. Even with perfect gas management, he'd be on emergency. Protocols now. The ROV's live feed showed only the entrance to the chimney, a dark vertical slash in the limestone wall. Of Alex there was no sign. The machine couldn't navigate the restriction that had swallowed the world's most accomplished cave diver hours earlier. Base de Morgan, Emergency Protocol Alpha. Activate emergency beacon if you receive this transmission. Marcus's message echoed unanswered through the underwater communication system. The emergency beacon, a separate system designed to activate, with a simple switch, remained silent. 5 hours in, Jamie removed his headset, the gesture communicating what words couldn't. Tracking beacon has stopped transmitting. The point of no return, the moment when even perfect execution of emergency procedures would not provide enough air for return, had passed 10 minutes earlier. Standard protocols shifted from rescue operations to recovery procedures. Marcus reached for the satellite phone, his movements deliberate, professional, betraying nothing of the emotion churning beneath. This is Phantom Base. Initiate emergency response plan Delta. We have a diver unresponsive, presumed ... He paused, the professional facade cracking momentarily. ... In distress beyond the chimney restriction. Requesting full recovery team. Deployment. Dr. Chun's hand rested briefly on his shoulder, a momentary break in the professional distance. They both knew what the statistics said about recovery operations at this depth, in these conditions. Outside the command tent, the afternoon sun continued its arc across the sky, oblivious to the drama unfolding below. The Phantom Passage had claimed divers before, its reputation built on the bodies of those who underestimated its dangers. But none had been as prepared, as skilled, or as respected as Alex Morgan. At the 6-hour mark, when Alex should have been emerging triumphant from the water, the command center instead turned to the grim logistics of assembling the world's most elite underwater recovery team. Each passing minute dimmed the already faint hope of finding the record-breaking diver alive. Dr. Chien updated the incident log with clinical precision. Diver Morgan, Alexander J. missing beyond chimney restriction. Last communication, 0942 hours. Recovery operation initiated 1445 hours. The formal language did nothing to soften the reality. Something had gone catastrophically wrong in the darkness below, and one of the world's greatest explorers was now lost in the place he had sought to conquer, breathing through compressed air at 130 feet below surface. Marcus Webb maintained perfect buoyancy as he checked his dive computer. 96 minutes since Alex Morgan's last transmission. Too long. Above him, Jamie was tracking 4 blips on his sonar display. The initial recovery team moving through the entrance to the Phantom Passage. Recovery 1, status check, his voice crackled. Through the underwater communication system. Recovery 1 copy, passing marker 2. Marcus's voice remained professional despite the growing pressure in his chest. He'd been in these tunnels with Alex dozens of times. Never for recovery. Dr. Chun monitored gas mixtures from her position as Recovery 2, her movements precise as she adjusted her trimix settings. The nitrogen concentration at this depth could trigger narcosis in less experienced divers. The team had prepared for this contingency. They hadn't prepared for losing Alex. Visibility dropping to 6 feet, Marcus reported. his dive light cutting through sediment clouds. Approaching restriction alpha. The underwater passage narrowed to a tight squeeze, barely 3 feet in diameter. Alex had mapped this section meticulously during previous reconnaissance dives. The team moved with methodical precision, checking each side passage and alcove. Equipment marker located. Dr. Chun's voice came through the comms. Her light illuminated. A yellow directional arrow, one of 20 Alex had brought to mark his path through the unmapped sections. Surface Recovery 1. We've confirmed Morgan's planned route. Proceeding to checkpoint 3. Marcus's words betrayed no emotion, but his breathing rate increased slightly. Dr. Chun noted the change, watching his bubbles. Stress responses were inevitable during recovery operations. Managing them was critical. 175 feet below surface now. Decompression obligations mounting with every minute. The recovery team had a maximum bottom time of 22 minutes before their safety. Margins would be compromised. Alex had planned for 40 minutes at this depth. Recovery 3 status? Marcus called to Pavel Kuznetsov, the Russian cave diving expert who joined the team after hearing of Morgan's disappearance. Depth gauge showing unexpected drop ahead, Pavel reported, his accent thick but words precise. Current pattern changing. His dive light revealed a narrow vertical shaft, not on any of Morgan's maps. Marcus checked the laminated survey they'd prepared from Alex's previous explorations. That's not documented. Possible new passage. The implications hung in the water. Between them, had Alex discovered something unexpected? Changed his planned route? At 210 feet, they discovered the first piece of Morgan's equipment. A spare primary light, carefully placed on a rock ledge. Intentional placement, Pavel observed, not dropped in emergency. The team documented each finding with underwater cameras. Methodical, thorough, professional, rescue operations transitioned to recovery with each passing hour, but they maintained protocol. Recovery 1. This is surface. You're approaching decompression limits. Jamie's voice remained calm, but the message was clear. Time was running out. At marker 17, they reached Morgan's last known position. The passage ahead split into 3 branches. None matched the original survey. Surface, we found evidence of recent passage collapse, Marcus reported, studying fresh fracture patterns in the limestone. Dr. Chen's scientific assessment was immediate. Seismic activity within the last 72 hours. Minor shift, but enough to alter passage geometry. Their dive computers beeped simultaneously. Decompression warnings. Recovery team, begin exit protocol, Marcus ordered, making the hardest call of his professional career. Leaving without Alex violated every instinct, but risking 3 more lives would help no one. Marking last position, Pavel confirmed, deploying a high-visibility marker with a recording device attached. If Alex was still moving through the system, it would capture any sound or light. The ascent began in silence, each diver processing the implications of what they'd found. Marcus activated his underwater slate, writing coordinates and observations while maintaining perfect buoyancy through the first decompression stop. On the surface, Jamie was already making calls. "This is beyond our capabilities," he told the support team, voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "We need specialized equipment, international support." He pulled up contact information for the cave diving recovery network. "And someone needs to call Maria Gutierrez." From a technical standpoint, the team had performed flawlessly. From a human standpoint, the mission was the most difficult any of them had ever undertaken. As they completed their decompression obligations, Marcus stared back into the darkness of the phantom passage. "We'll be back," he promised silently, watching his bubbles rise toward the surface. "And next time we'll bring you home." Darkness had become a living entity in the command center established at Phantom Cave's entrance, swallowing hope with each passing hour. 48 hours after Alex Morgan's missed final communication, the atmosphere had shifted from rescue to recovery. Dr. Chun studied the topographical mapping with bloodshot eyes while Marcus Webb recalibrated equipment for the third time. His movements mechanical, purposeful, but tinged with the resignation that comes when professional knowledge overcomes emotional denial. International Team's transport just landed, Jamie announced, looking up from her monitoring station. ETA 30 minutes to base camp. The mood shifted subtly. Not hope exactly, but the electricity that comes with elite professionals taking control of an impossible situation. The hastily established operations center hummed with activity as satellite communications relayed vitals, dive tables and contingency protocols to tablets and waterproof displays. Maria Gutierrez arrived first, her weathered face telling stories of 2 decades in underwater recovery before anyone read her credentials. The former Navy Special Operations diver moved with measured precision, her eyes scanning the cave entrance with the calculated assessment of someone who had pulled bodies from sunken submarines and earthquake-collapsed underwater structures across 5 continents. "Show me everything you have," she ordered without preamble, her Spanish accent slight but perceptible under pressure. Mapping, currents, final communication timestamps, equipment manifests, gas calculations. Behind her, 6 divers unloaded specialized equipment from reinforced cases. Rebrothers modified for extreme depth, specialized propulsion units, and communication systems designed to penetrate rock with ultrasonic signals where radio waves failed. Each move was choreographed, efficient. These weren't just technical divers but recovery specialists who had seen death in the darkness and returned with answers. Morgan's last confirmed position was here, Dr. Chen explained, indicating the 3-dimensional projection. Approximately 1,200 feet penetration, 328 feet depth at this restriction. Initial rescue team found his stage bottles here, and here as planned, indicating he progressed at least to this chamber. Gutierrez studied the display, her expression unchanged but her eyes calculating depths, distances, gas requirements. These current readings, when were they taken? 6 hours before Morgan's entry. We've been monitoring fluctuations, but the system's showing unusual patterns after a minor seismic event registered yesterday. At a separate station, Technical Supervisor Hiroshi Nakamura calibrated what looked like mechanical eels, autonomous underwater drones equipped with high-definition sonar and imaging systems designed to navigate the tightest restrictions. The KX-7 units can move through passages as narrow as 7 inches while mapping and transmitting data, he explained to Marcus. They're programmed to follow the guideline Morgan would have laid, but can deviate when identifying human-shaped anomalies or equipment signatures. The team spoke in technical shorthand that would be incomprehensible to outsiders. Decompression algorithms, redundant gas management, scrubber durations, and contingencies for silt-outs and equipment failures. Each sentence carried the weight of lives previously lost, lessons hard-learned in underwater graves around the world. "We're not operating under any illusions," Gutierrez addressed the room, her tone matter-of-fact. "Based on gas supply calculations and water temperature, we're conducting a recovery, not a rescue. Our primary objective is retrieving Morgan and documenting exactly what happened. Secondary objective is securing any equipment or data devices that might provide answers." The command center fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words settling like silt disturbed in crystal water. "The dive plan is as follows," she continued, bringing up detailed schematics on the main display. 3 teams of 2. Alpha team focuses on the primary route Morgan planned, following his guideline to the last known position. Beta team will deploy through the secondary entrance to cover potential alternate routes if Morgan diverted from his plan. Gamma team remains at the restriction point with additional gas supplies and communications equipment. Dr. Chun studied the medical readouts from the team's preliminary checks. The water temperature at depth means we're looking at significant hypothermia factors. Even with his specialized exposure protection, Morgan's core temperature would have dropped below sustainable levels approximately 10 hours after his gas supply was exhausted. No one mentioned the unspoken calculation that Alex Morgan had been dead for at least 30 hours. Outside the command center, media crews had begun to gather, drawn by the presence of Gutierrez's internationally renowned team. Their arrival had transformed the narrative from a missing diver to a significant recovery operation. The story was evolving. No longer about a record attempt, but about what secrets the Phantom Passage had claimed, and what answers might be recovered from the darkness. Final equipment check in 20 minutes, water entry in 40, Gutierrez announced, already donning the specialized undergarments designed to delay hypothermia in the 39-degree water. Torres, I want those drones in the water 5 minutes before we enter. Nakamura, communications check every 15 minutes once we're past the first restriction. As the recovery divers methodically prepared their equipment, the atmosphere shifted from the chaotic urgency of rescue to the solemn precision of recovery. These were professionals who operated in the narrow space where technology, physiology, and psychology intersected with the most hostile environment on Earth. They moved with the quiet confidence of those who regularly ventured into places where humans were never meant to survive. In the equipment staging area, Gutierrez paused beside a photograph of Morgan, taped to the operation board, his smile confident above a technical rebreather after his previous world record dive. "We'll bring you home," she murmured, a private promise before turning back to the meticulous preparation that would carry her team into the darkness where Alex Morgan had sought the impossible and found something they were about to discover. Darkness has its own weight at 400 feet beneath the surface, a physical presence pressing against dive lights and human resolve alike. Maria Gutierrez felt it as her team moved methodically through the narrow restriction that had claimed 3 lives before Alex Morgan's attempt. Her dive computer showed 37 minutes of bottom time, the Trimix blend in her rebreather carefully calibrated for these extreme depths. Behind her, 4 elite recovery divers maintained perfect trim, their movements economical, deliberate, the hallmarks of professionals who understood that a single mistake at this depth meant joining the person they sought to recover. Primary passage clear, moving to junction Alpha. Maria's voice transmitted through the hardwired communication system they'd installed during the previous 3 dives. The technology, experimental at these depths, had been deployed specifically for this recovery operation. Surface control responded immediately. Dr. Chun's voice slightly distorted but clear. Copy junction Alpha. Gas management status? Team operating at planned consumption rates. Bailout reserves at 92%, Maria confirmed, her eyes scanning the digital readouts on her wrist-mounted system. Even with their closed-circuit rebreathers, the team carried multiple redundant gas supplies. A standard protocol made even more stringent after Alex's disappearance. The limestone walls narrowed as they approached the last documented position in Alex's dive plan. Their lights revealed the telltale signs of recent passage. Slight disturbance in the silt layer, almost impossible to detect without their specialized training. The team had rehearsed this search pattern in 3 different cave systems before attempting the real recovery. Contact, reported Takashi, the team's evidence specialist. His light illuminated a primary stage tank resting against the cave wall. Markings confirm it's Morgan's equipment. Tank pressure gauge shows 340 psi remaining. Maria approached, examining the perfectly placed tank. Nothing about its position suggested panic or disorganization. Alex had staged his gas supplies exactly as planned, the hallmark of a technical diver operating with precision, even at extreme depths. Surface Recovery 1. We've located primary stage tank at waypoint Delta 7. Position suggests normal gas. Management and planned equipment staging. Dr. Chen acknowledged as the team documented the discovery with high-resolution imaging. Every piece of evidence would later be analyzed by dive accident investigators seeking to understand what happened. Movement pattern suggests Morgan continued along planned route. Takashi observed, pointing to subtle indicators in the cave floor that the team had been trained to recognize. The passage widened unexpectedly, opening into a chamber that didn't appear on any of their mapping files. Maria signaled a standard search pattern, the team spreading into a practiced formation that would allow methodical examination of the space, while maintaining visual contact. Surface: we've entered an unmapped chamber approximately 30 meters beyond the last known survey point. Dimensions: approximately 40 meters by 25 meters, with a ceiling height of 12 meters. Negative documentation of this space and any previous surveys. Surface control confirmed after a brief delay. Proceed with caution. James, operating the team's underwater imaging platform, released the tethered rove to scan the chamber's upper reaches while the divers maintained their depth. The small vehicle's powerful lights revealed spectacular limestone formations that had never been photographed before. Secondary equipment cache located, Maria announced 12 minutes later. The team converged on a small alcove where Alex's distinctive yellow equipment bag had been carefully placed. The arrangement of gear told its own story. This had been a planned stop, not an emergency deployment. Inside the bag, secured in a waterproof case, they found what they'd been searching for. Alex's backup camera and dive computer, both specifically designed to survive pressures that would crush standard equipment. Priority recovery confirmed, Maria reported, her voice maintaining professional detachment despite the significance of the find, initiating protective extraction protocol. As Takashi secured the equipment for transport, Maria's light caught something unexpected. A thin guideline leading to a narrow restriction at the chamber's far side. The line, marked with Alex's distinctive personalized markers, disappeared into a passage barely wide enough for a single diver. Surface: we've located a deployed guideline heading into an unexplored restriction. Line markers confirm Morgan's equipment. Negative exploration of new passages, came Dr. Chun's immediate response. Complete primary recovery, objective only. Maria acknowledged the order, knowing the expedition leaders were right. Safety protocols existed for a reason. Whatever had drawn Alex into that unexplored passage would have to wait for a dedicated exploration team. Team, complete documentation and prepare for extraction, she ordered, watching as James' ROV completed its final sweep of the chamber. The high-definition video would allow scientists to study this virgin territory without risking additional lives. As they prepared to leave, Maria noticed a final detail, a small marker Alex had left beside his equipment cache. It wasn't a standard directional marker or warning sign. Instead, it was the personal symbol he used to mark significant discoveries. Maria carefully photographed it before signaling the team to begin their controlled ascent. Alex Morgan had found something extraordinary in this chamber, something worth documenting even as he pushed deeper into the unknown. The specialized computer and camera they carried would tell the rest of the story, revealing what had drawn one of the world's best cave divers to risk everything for one final discovery. Beginning extraction, Maria announced. Bottom time 54 minutes. Decompression schedule standard according to Plan Alpha. As the recovery team started the long, methodical ascent that would take nearly 5 hours to complete, they carried more than just equipment. They carried answers that would finally explain what had happened in the darkness of the Phantom Passage, and why Alex Morgan had chosen to venture beyond the last mapped frontier of the underwater world. Frame by frame, the recovered camera footage revealed what no living person had witnessed. Dr. Lena Chun's hands trembled slightly as she connected Alex's backup camera to the specialized recovery system. its waterproof housing showing signs of extreme pressure damage, but the memory card somehow intact. The recovery team gathered in silence around the monitor station they'd established in the forward base camp, their faces illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. Time index matches his last communication, Maria observed, her former Navy Special Ops training evident in her methodical approach. Depth gauge reading 347 feet, partial pressure of oxygen still within safe parameters. Her finger traced the data scrolling alongside the video, years of technical diving experience allowing her to read the complex information as easily as a newspaper. The footage showed Alex's steady progress through the third restriction, his powerful dive lights cutting through the darkness of the phantom passage. His breathing, measured through his rebreather system, maintained the disciplined rhythm that had made him a record holder. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, exactly as he'd trained thousands of times before. Look there, Marcus pointed to a subtle change in Alex's heading. Current shift. See how he's compensating? The team watched as Alex adjusted his trim, his body position shifting with professional precision to account for the unexpected water movement. Cave diving veterans recognized the expertise in his movements, the micro-adjustments that kept him stable in the unpredictable environment. At 103 minutes into the dive, the first anomaly appeared. Alex's primary lighting system flickered, dimmed, then stabilized at reduced power. His dive computer, visible in the corner of the frame, showed his immediate response, reducing depth by 12 feet to establish a position where he could assess the equipment failure. Classic Morgan procedure, Jamie observed. He's following his own emergency protocol perfectly. The team watched in tense silence as Alex methodically checked his backup systems, his movements deliberate despite being nearly 1,000 feet from the cave entrance with limited gas reserves. The footage showed him making the decision to deploy his backup light, its beam noticeably less powerful but sufficient for navigation. Here's where it happens, Dr. Chun said quietly as the video timestamp hit 127 minutes. Alex's camera suddenly captured what appeared to be an opening to the right of the main passage. A restriction barely wide enough for a single diver, not marked on any of the known maps. The footage showed his hesitation, his primary route now compromised by reduced visibility, this unexpected option appearing like a potential alternative. Currents increasing in the main passage, Maria noted, pointing to the subtle movement of silt particles in Alex's light beam. His gas calculations would have been affected. The team watched as Alex made the fateful decision, turning toward the unmapped passage, his movements still controlled and professional. The camera captured his entry into the narrow restriction, the rock walls closing in until they were mere inches from his equipment on either side. Then, unexpectedly, the passage opened into something spectacular. An enormous underwater chamber, its ceiling rising beyond the reach of Alex's lights, its walls covered with pristine mineral formations no human had ever documented. "My God," whispered Marcus, "he found it, the cathedral chamber." For 3 minutes, the footage showed Alex carefully navigating the chamber, his lights revealing geological formations of extraordinary beauty and scientific importance. His breathing remained steady as he documented the discovery, the professional discipline that had made him a record holder evident even in this moment of unexpected exploration. The final sequence began at minute 142. The backup light began to fade, and the camera captured Alex's turn toward what appeared to be an exit passage on the far side of the chamber. His movements were still precise, unhurried despite the deteriorating situation. The last frame showed his hand reaching toward a promising opening, the dive computer displaying critically low gas reserves, but a potential route upward. Then darkness. Recovery team leader Maria closed her eyes briefly, the weight of what they'd witnessed settling across her shoulders. "He didn't panic," she said finally. "Even at the end, he was exploring, problem-solving, looking for a way through. Dr. Chun carefully removed the memory card. Now the most important evidence in understanding what happened in the darkness nearly a mile underground. "This changes our understanding of the entire Phantom system," she said quietly. "And we'd never have known without his final dive." Marcus stared at the dark monitor, 20 years of diving partnership with Alex evident in his expression. "He found what he was looking for," he said finally. "The cathedral. No one believed it existed." Maria Gutierrez stood, her decision immediate and clear. "We recover him now. We know where to look." Her voice carried the authority of someone used to impossible missions. "And we bring back his discovery too, the Morgan Cathedral. That's what we'll call it in the survey records." The recovery team nodded in silent agreement as they began preparations for the final phase. Alex Morgan had given his life to push the boundaries of exploration, and now his last journey would expand humanity's understanding of the hidden world beneath the surface. Through 3 countries they came, cave divers gathering silently at dawn's first light on the shoreline where Alex Morgan had taken his final breath before descending into the Phantom Passage. Maria Gutierrez stood at the water's edge, the recovered dive computer clutched in her weathered hand, its data having finally revealed the full story of what happened in the darkness below. "Decompression protocols complete," Dr. Chun announced, closing her medical log as the last recovery team members cleared their final safety stops. All personnel accounted for. Operation officially concluded at 0627 hours. The international recovery operation had lasted 17 days, involved 28 specialized cave divers, and pushed equipment to limits never before tested in underwater recovery. But they had succeeded where others had failed. They had brought Alex home. Behind Maria, Jamie Torres calibrated the final mapping overlay, the 3D holographic display showing what Alex's last journey had revealed. An underwater passage system, extending nearly 400 meters beyond any previously documented point. The discovery would change underwater cartography forever. "He found the chamber," Marcus whispered, eyes fixed on the spectacular dome-like formation displayed in the hologram. "The Chamber of Echoes. Everyone said it was just a myth." The newly discovered cavern, with its unique acoustical properties, had been whispered about in diving circles for decades. No one had ever confirmed its existence until now. The recovered camera footage played on a separate monitor, its final frames analyzed frame by the technical committee. The footage showed Alex's discovery of the chamber, his obvious elation captured in the way he moved through the water. Then came the equipment malfunction. Primary regulator failure at 97 meters, followed by a cascading series of events that no diver, regardless of experience, could have fully overcome. "He made all the right decisions," Maria stated, her voice carrying the weight of professional assessment rather than emotion. "Switched to backup air supply, initiated emergency protocols, attempted to return via the most direct route." She paused, studying the final readings. The current shift was unpredictable. Nothing in our previous mapping indicated that kind of hydraulic force in that section. Dr. Chun nodded in agreement. His body showed no signs of panic, no evidence of rapid breathing or uncontrolled ascent. He maintained discipline until the end. The scientific committee had already begun implementing what they now called the Morgan Protocol, standardized procedures for extreme depth cave exploration based on the data recovered from Alex's final dive. 3 equipment manufacturers had requested the telemetry to improve fail-safe mechanisms on their regulators. 5 lives, Marcus said suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. That's what the recovery team estimates will be saved annually once these new protocols are implemented. 5 lives every year because of what we learned, because of him. Maria accessed the final navigation map, the one showing the complete Phantom Passage system, including Alex's discoveries. The Morgan Passage, she designated, marking the previously uncharted section with an official notation. The naming would be formalized at the International Cave Diving Congress next month. Outside, diving teams from 14 countries formed a line along the shore, tanks and equipment positioned with military precision. The memorial flotilla would dive to the cave entrance, as deep as was safe for recreational limits, and release biodegradable markers that would drift into the darkness, following the currents that had claimed one of their own. "He once told me," Jamie said, checking the calibration on the memorial buoys, "that true exploration isn't about conquering nature. It's about revealing her secrets with respect." The dive computer in Maria's hand gave one final beep as its memory backup completed. Everything Alex had learned, every measurement he had taken, every discovery he had made was now preserved. His journey had ended, but his exploration would continue through the divers who would follow the path he had marked. "Commence memorial." "Protocol," Maria ordered, professional to the end, despite the emotion visible in her eyes. "Standard formation, 30-meter maximum depth, full documentation of the ceremony." As the teams entered the water in perfect synchronization, Dr. Chun updated the final record, the Phantom Passage exploration, begun by Alex Morgan as a personal quest, has concluded as the most significant cartographic expansion of underwater cave systems in the 21st century. The technical data recovered will inform diving safety protocols for generations. Maria watched the bubbles rising from the memorial dive, her expression that of a commander overseeing a mission of honor. "Exploration complete," she whispered. "Diver returning home."